What is up, everybody? We are back, finally, for the Unnamed MTG podcast, episode 7, Xander, real name TBA. And this is going to be our set championship sunset show, because about a week and a half ago we had our very last set championship for the time being, with the Streets of New Capenna set championship, and there was a lot that happened, and a lot that really showed off just how good Standard is right now, I feel. As well as just like really throwing everybody for a loop as to what is actually good in Standard, what coming out of New Capenna are the actual powerhouses, and of course, what people are going to be playing moving forward. So I'm joined as always by my very good friend Drabinoops, who actually plays more Standard than I do, because I primarily play non-rotating formats,
Mm-hmm.
both on my channel as well as offline. So I'll be leaning on you a little bit here, my friend, to talk about some of this stuff. So,
All
what
right.
was your overall impression of the set championship as a viewer?
Uh, Starting out, I read some of the coverage and saw what was going on, and I was a little skeptical. My tune did change a little bit but at the beginning, I absolutely did recognize that Esper mid range was the most reasonable choice for someone wanting to go into the tournament and have the most overall positive matchup against the entire field, including Esper mid range. That being said, I'm very much the Rakdos artifact guy
Sure.
right now, and there were only two of those, and I don't like their lists. So when I started the weekend, I was like, eh. But then as the weekend went on, I started watching people perform new decks that I hadn't seen before actually coming out of the woodwork,
Mm-hmm.
which I was completely surprised by because I thought I had seen them all in the queues that I was playing in,
Sure.
and it turned out to be really fun. I even had fun with a couple of the historic matches that I watched, but they weren't my focus, obviously.
No, for sure. Just yeah, I think that's pretty much a lot of people's thoughts on historic right now. Is that not many people were actually all that interested in watching historic. Just and honestly, like I get that. Like a lot of players just like as like the people who would be watching this already don't really like arena formats for the most part. A lot of competitive
Yeah.
players really just dislike historic and well, at least since the introduction of alchemy, that is. So it's definitely an understandable viewpoint. But yeah, so I think the more important bit of the tournament was the standard portion.
Yeah.
Because we got the metagame breakdown and it is incredibly diverse.
Yes.
Um, Esper mid range, shock and awe. The deck everybody expected to be there occupied 34.5% of the field. Um, but from the data showing here, it looks like it didn't convert all that well into top performers, albeit you have to take some results with a grain of salt. Split
Mm-hmm.
format tournament, but Esper mid range, it put what is it? It had
Two of
two
the top eight.
6-1 performances, and then I
Oh,
believe
okay. Oh,
a
you actually found the
singleton
list.
copy made it
Okay.
into the top eight in the hands of Simon Nielsen, who did ultimately, take it all the way to the finals, and also Zachary Keeney. So it
Yeah.
occupied, a quarter of the top eight, but then to see that at the 6-1 mark, there were only two more people, and then a couple of 5-2s as well. So just to see it, for being 34.5% of the metagame, it sure wasn't 34.5% of the winners metagame, even in the standard portion, isolating historic. Which definitely seems like the sort of the story of the tournament is that everybody came knowing Esper was good, knowing that
Mm-hmm.
all these strategies were strong, um,
Uh,
and almost
Fun.
like Esper could do no wrong, but it definitely seems to have to not done well. What were your impressions of that?
Yeah, no, I was very surprised. In fact, I'm gonna try to bring up these comparisons side by side. Um, of the decks in the top eight, the most impressive, um, I would say, is actually Jund mid range,
Mm-hmm.
which represented 9% of the field with 20 decks and still got two people in the top eight.
And they were two very different Jund mid. There was not a concise build of the Jund mid range decks
Yeah.
from the looks of the deck lists in the tournament.
Yeah, but then I mean the rest of the tournament, we've got like a Jeskai Hanada, a Naya mid range, a Jeskai Storm, Grixis Vampires, like
Yeah.
crazy top eight. Like,
Yeah, that was like ultimately the takeaway, right? Is that like a three color format, like
mhm.
to the extreme, there was one not three color deck that was in the
Oh
six and
yeah.
one category. Was that Is It Mill player, which is a holdover from the Kamigawa standard format. But it's like to see that New Capenna came out. The mana is good. It's
Hmm.
slow, but it's good. So the game is favoring a lot of mid-range decks. The
Yes.
mid-range decks have the tool to beat the aggro decks because you don't see a lot of mono white aggro. Not even Naya Runes even struggled, which is another deck a lot of
Yeah.
people were very prepared for, and realistically only did as well as it did probably because it has such an aggressive, on the play game plan. But to see that the metagame ended up being this diverse and just absolutely loaded with three color decks, I think it's a sign of how successful New
Mhm.
Capenna is as a set. And
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh no, no, go ahead. No, no. I was gonna elaborate more. And I think you'll have some ideas too of why Esper was so popular going in. But
It
please
was
finish your
Rafine.
thought.
I'll tell you,
That is one of them. Yeah.
I've played a lot with Rafine, and I have Connive 7 with Rafine, and Windfalling the top of your deck is quite strong, uh,
Hmm.
as anybody who has played the card Windfall would know, or any other wheel. And honestly,
Yeah.
it feels very much like it's a card that scales up very quickly. Being a 3 mana 1/4 flying ward 1 is quite a big deal. But even the fact that like you could play it in these like 2-drop aggressive centric decks where you can go a turn 2 Ledger Shredder, turn or Luminarch Aspirin, it's just even better. Play Rafine, attack, connive on that creature, discard a tenacious underdog, and just start getting in very quickly. So these Esper decks are deceptively aggressive, but then also have these tools to just play this long game of high toughness creatures plus the Meat Hook Massacre, which is quite
Oh yeah.
impressive so far.
I mean, and it has this toolbox of amazing cards. Obviously, you have Rafine, which is very good at growing not just itself but your team above
Goes
a
to
lot
anything.
of the, yeah, above a lot of the damage based or minus based removal that we've been seeing. Um, and a lot of the just destroy target creature stuff that we have been seeing isn't actually that good.
Yeah, like
Um,
Void Rend is probably like was one of the cards people were expecting to be like this absolute counter to uh
yes,
to creatures. And it is good, and you do see some copies of it because it can kill things through their ward text, but it is ultimately still 3 mana, and 3 mana is a
yeah,
lot of mana for something that is likely to be trading with
yeah.
a 2-drop, unfortunately.
I saw more success with the red hate card against Rafine than I saw Void Ren. There were more people playing it.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, the
and
go ahead.
no, yeah, and then additionally, playing Rafine puts you in the colors to play Vanishing Verse, which just shuts down so many of these archetypes,
Hmm.
including the Jeskai Storm deck, which
Yep.
needs its Goldspan Dragon to combo off.
Yes. So being able to vanishing verse, it's gone, it's done with. But these Jeskai Storm decks, they came prepared.
That's true.
They are very very aware
Hmm.
of Esper, and you even see it in the data. Is that the Jeskai Storm deck was probably the best performing deck in Standard.
Yeah.
Uh, it converted, people into the top 8, a lot of 6-1 decks, which is a good sign. And that's isolating again the historic performance of these players. They
Yeah.
went in their 7 rounds of standard 6-1 with their standard deck, which is means that was a high win ratio. But it's just seeing that, and then the kind of similar but not quite the same Jeskai Hanada decks. Those decks feel like they very specifically came ready to play against Vanishing First by leaning on Hinata
Yeah,
instead of
and
Lear to be a combo piece.
Yeah, and a lot of the Grixis Vampire decks were built also with Esper in mind, playing a lot of multicolored cards, and the monocolored cards that they were playing,
Hmm.
monocolored creatures that they were playing, were to trigger Evelyn the Covetous.
Yep, exactly. So this like card advantage engine
Yep.
with Evelyn, and Evelyn is yeah a very strong card advantage piece. So it's not surprising to see a Grixis deck pop up using that because you even have cards like Corpse Appraiser, which
Oh,
are
Corpse Appraiser is great.
which is a creature that replaces itself to begin with. And personally,
Hmm.
it's a card that I had earmarked for like probably one of the better mid-rangey creatures to come out of the set, out of the get-go. And it's one I actually feel has the chance to make it into like Pioneer, uh, where you
Oh,
can easily play Grixis vampires and have a mana base that supports it, but it also there's just more things you want to eat out of the graveyard incidentally.
there was actually, because I believe Reed Duke was on the Grixis Vampires
Yeah,
deck.
it was his team that made it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he was in a feature match, and I don't remember who he's playing against, but his opponent had knowledge that Reed had a Corpse Appraiser to some extent, or at least assumed that he might draw it, and because of that, chose not to block, so there wouldn't be a creature in their graveyard for Corpse Appraiser to remove.
Yep, exactly.
And it was so Corpse Appraiser was such a legitimate card advantage, like threat, that they chose to take damage instead to negate that,
Yeah, to
which
stop it
is
from being,
which is great.
doing its ability. It is absolutely impressive, and that seems to be a trend with a lot of cards. Because the other big card coming out of the set, just not maybe just in standard, but in general, was Ledger Shredder. Like
Yeah.
being like that's probably like that card's being played in every single format that you can
Hmm.
play it in, and it's good in every single format thus far. And it's another card that like Corpse Appraiser in that spot makes your opponent have to take lines that are suboptimal
Yeah.
in order to respect it, which I think is a really cool like design win. Where just like Corpse Appraiser punishes you for jump blocking, and Ledger Shredder, you know, punishes you for playing efficiently. Like, and
Yes.
so it's just like really, really fun designs that I'm a big fan of. Really like it when they design stuff like
Yeah,
this.
it's actually, I think, for a card that we did not see a lot of, Ledger Shredder might have been very vital in people's deck constructions because we are seeing a lot of on the curve, not playing multiple cards a turn unless you're going for a combo decks.
Yeah,
And
a lot of tap out decks, a lot of one
a lot of
spell, one impactful spell turn decks,
yeah, and
or play something on my turn and hold up an instant on yours.
yeah, and Ledger Shredder is so strong. In fact, when playing on in standard, specifically with the Rakdos deck that I take most of the time, Ledger Shredder to me is more of a threat than Rafine.
Yes, because the fact is
And
that if you keep continuously trigger it, they're just gonna have a threat that's big and flies.
yes, exactly. And um, I th- I think people made a decision, a conscious decision, not to play Ledger Shredder with the knowledge that people were going to be respect it.
What's the old Path to Exile paradox of
Yes,
Path to
exactly.
Exile made cards in its standard unplayable, so nobody played them, but then
Yeah.
just nobody played Path to Exile because
Yes.
all everybody was building their decks in order to be insulated against it. So it's just like that weird dynamic of we're looking at a card being so good that it pushed itself out of the format.
Hmm.
At least in the context of those lines, which is insane. I love it when that happens, but because again I think a sign of a successful card design,
Oh
at
no,
least in the
absolutely.
sense of like in standard. Obviously, if it's doing that in other formats, that's a little bit more of a problematic
Hmm.
design at that point because it's a long term thing. But yeah, absolutely big fan. Some of the other things that came out of this event was the lack of Ob Nixilis, despite the junk mid
Yes.
range decks, which again circles back to Esper. People knew
Hmm.
Esper going into the format.
Yep.
They knew Obnixilis sucked really hard against
Mhm.
Rafine, and understandably so. It turns out when your opponent has just like flying creatures, they can just fly over
Yes.
the devils, kill your Obnixilis. So he just doesn't seem to line up well in standard. Does that surprise you that Obnixilis has turned out to be
Uh,
not nearly as good as people wanted it to be during the previous season?
no, no, and I think it has a lot to do with how people viewed Omnixilis to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit to do with them not adjusting their playstyle and expectations for the reality of what the standard has become. Um, I I have been playing, and I've talked about this before. Going even, not having good performances, bad performances, basically coming out even, sometimes coming out a little bit ahead, um, and kind of maintaining my gems so I can enter tournaments and things, queues and stuff like that. And it really has changed how I view Obnixilis. I mean, the obvious pattern before was like you make the copy, make the devil tick up on the other one, and I've more than often, depending on the matchup, just double uptick now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
there's lot less downtick the one uptick. You downtick the original, uptick the
yeah,
token. Which
yeah,
you can do in a vacuum, but yeah, like more often than not, like
yeah.
the life gain is not relevant, and
Hmm.
just trying to either deal 4 damage or eat a card or 2 cards even
Yeah.
is quite strong. And yeah, I'll tell you, RIP to my wallet. I dropped $120 on my playset Obnixiluses, and they're currently $15 a piece. So they've literally dropped by 50%. But I will say I think it is a card that will be good at some point.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm sure as standard evolves, we'll see it slip back into decks or
Hmm.
sideboards to punish certain types of strategies, as well as you'll see it in formats like Pioneer, where it is just a really good card against control decks. Because as it turns out, when you cast 2 copies of a card for 3 mana, it's really good against counter spells, which
Yes.
is not a big thing in standard right now. There are counter spells that exist, but it's usually like disdainful stroke to hit, counter Hanada and Goldspan
Hmm.
Dragon and things like that. Not
Yeah.
not like a negate or anything along those lines.
I saw people experimenting with the Forecast Obscura card with lifelink that connives.
Yeah, where it
Um,
bounces a spell basically.
yeah, and I'll be honest, like if you're gonna play that, you need to understand how that works because I had people bounce my token copy, or no, I had my non-token copy. So
Yeah,
you're
which is
supposed
just
you
actively bad.
no, you want to bounce the token copy. So
Yes.
that's so there's stuff like that here and there.
Hmm.
I think a card that, especially seeing, um, now I think probably one of the exceptions, something that I'd really want to plan for personally going forward, is the combo decks
Hmm.
where like Jeskai Hanata or Jeskai Storm.
Oh sure.
They're gonna change a little bit how I play things, but
Oh yeah.
uh, looking at the
Absolutely.
looking at the other six decks, um, I think a card, if you're saying you want to plan for, I guess that would be what, 75% of the field basically, assuming that people are mimicking the top eight in equal numbers, which is
Sure.
obviously not true, but obviously it's just a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Um, if you're gonna play a sacrifice deck, with or without Omnixilis, I think you should be jamming Eaten Alives.
Yeah, you
Uh,
just need like some hard answer
yes,
that does something that trades up mana. You
yes,
can
and
sack your non-relevant, your Voltairean Epicures and what things that just are the little shitters as we say.
yeah, and people are playing generally at least. Let's see. Actually, some of these Esper mid-range decks aren't, but a lot of these decks are running at least one copy of Takenuma
Mm-hmm.
to get back
Yep.
their big planeswalker or creature threats, and
Yes.
Eat Alive exiles it. So Takenuma
Yeah.
is not something you have to worry about in that case.
No,
Um,
absolutely. It's a very big deal. The
yeah,
fact that exiles.
Yeah, and you still have to know what you're doing in the matchup against a lot of these decks, but even just including that in your deck, provided that everything's going the way it should be, will up your percentage just a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, no, I foresee. Yeah, well, I imagine Esper will probably hold true as like a very go-to deck. It feels very
Yeah.
similar to like the Sultai mid-range decks from a few
Hmm.
years ago, where it's like
Yeah.
it's probably just going to be the mid-range deck of the format, and it's going to be a matter of how they can adapt and build their decks correctly to perform
Yeah.
against whatever they. Because I imagine that the Esper deck could be tuned to basically just beat anything, right? It
Yeah.
has all the tools necessary to beat literally anything that
Yeah.
it gets in its way. It's just a matter of how you tune your deck, which is why we'll probably see it not perform well on the ladder because it'll
Yeah.
just like have the wrong half of its cards from time to time. But in these closed metagame events, we'll probably see it perform exceptionally well, at least in a way
Oh
that
yeah.
rewards the people who know how to deck build. So I do imagine the Jeskai Storm deck, on the other hand, which is really only there's only really one way to build that deck. Uh,
Yep.
if you don't, and then you could play the similar Jeskai Hinata decks. Those decks are very linear compared to the
Yeah.
mid-range deck, which is super flexible. But like we'll probably see that deck be played a lot, I imagine, just given that like it is a very proactive deck that has some interaction. So it's just like a very much up the alley of the people who grind the ladder a lot. It also
Yeah.
wins
And
very quickly, most of the
oh
time.
yeah. And that is an important thing to note because you touched on it a little bit. Closed closed environment tournaments versus open environment ladders are entirely different
Yeah, they can.
beasts.
There's some huge differences. There's differences in incentive too.
Yeah,
Like
you're gonna.
like mono red aggro gets played
Mhm.
more on the ladder than it does in normal events
Yeah.
because you can play more games, like
Yes.
which is generally a better time for a good chunk of people. But yeah, just like we're gonna see some big differences. So I imagine the standard ladder will just be mostly a lot of Jeskai decks.
Hmm.
I did play the standard metagame challenge twice. Did not get all the way to the final, but I played Esper midrange in that just to sort of get a feel. And yeah, just like it was all Jeskai. I think I played against Jeskai like 70% of that, and then like Naya runes for the rest of it. Didn't play a single mirror match, oddly enough, but yeah, the definitely seems standard looks like a really fun format, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
hoping that trend continues because we get Dominaria United next for standard, which is
Ooh,
what like
yes.
September or something like that. So
Hmm.
we'll have a few months of this. I'm really happy they put the set championship super early into the format. Like New
Yeah.
Japan has been out for a few weeks, but it hasn't been out for like 3 months. So like standard was still, and it go to show that for like probably the first time in a long time we had a set championship where like the decks going into the event weren't super obvious.
Yeah, that's
Because
true actually.
like Esper like we've known about Esper mid range for like a week and a half, 2 weeks now, but like Jeskai Storm, not so much. Jeskai Hinata, that was a meme during Kamigawa standard,
Yes.
but is showing itself to be quite the powerhouse now. But even and then the various Jund mid-range decks, people either had thought Jund was going to overperform or Jund was going to just be absolutely dead in the water, from what I could understand from my various sources. So
Yeah.
to see that it not only it did show up in low numbers, but it did relatively well, put a few people into the high win categories is again a testament to just how diverse the format is. It's super exciting. I'm
Oh,
looking forward to
absolutely.
playing more standard in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I didn't know there was a standard metagame challenge going on right now, and if I'm being completely honest, once we're done with this, I'm probably jumping into a couple of those.
Yeah, no, I'll go for it, my friend. But the metadata isn't the only thing that was interesting.
No.
Coming out of the championship here, of course, our champion Jan Merkel. Big deal. Guy's been having a good couple of years. I say that, but he actually this is his second big win. His first one coming 16 years ago at the age of
Ooh.
17. Jan Merkel won Pro Tour Kobe in 2000 and what is it 2016? No, 2006. So just a huge a huge second win for him. On top of just several really strong finishes over the last few years, so just really exciting to see Jan Merkel really just kind of a revitalize himself and b just like set himself up for what is going to be quite the exciting return to the more traditional Pro Tour system. So
Hmm.
I'm really looking forward to seeing both him and of course his fellow finalist Simon Nielsen, who is another person who's just been on an absolute tear over the last few years. Just really exciting to see these guys and how they're kind of some of the new mainstay pros, or at least on their way to becoming that. So
Hmm.
very exciting to see that. Have you been keeping an eye on these two?
Um, I'll be honest. I generally don't pay attention to a lot of the players, especially when I'm occupied with other stuff, other things that I'm doing.
Sure.
Um, but man, I have never been so like excited by a tournament outcome, tournament coverage,
hmm
in a very long time. And I
The
think that
coverage
it
for
kind of,
this event was much better
yeah,
than it has been recently.
yeah, and I think that really speaks to kind of like how things are going to be moving forward.
hmm
And while I can't guarantee it, I think I'm going to start actually paying attention again.
Yeah, no, it's great, and well, that and like just the coverage is getting better. I imagine it will only continue to get better. Um, I would love, by the way, I was talking with my teammates from the NRG about like, hey, I love Marshall Sutcliffe. He's probably my favorite like caster on like
Hmm.
anything. He just has a good voice. He's knowledgeable. He knows his stuff. He does his research. And he makes for a really good play-by-play commentator.
Yes.
And then they can set him up with somebody like Paul Cheon, who is another like who's just a beloved Magic player
Yeah.
to begin with, like beloved community person as well as a former streamer. So you can pair him up with there. You could pair him up with really anybody, and he does a good job. And you got Cedric Phillips, another fantastic commentator. The people's commentator, as we
Hmm.
say, coming from his former Star City days as a commentator. I would love if the two commentary teams if they could manage to convince Patrick Sullivan to come commentate with Cedric Phillips. I feel like that would do a lot of justice for
Yeah.
the coverage, especially with the return to tabletop Magic. I have a strong feeling like a lot of people would really like to see those two reunite on coverage for the actual Pro Tour because they were probably the best coverage team for
Oh, yeah.
years. Like those two, and then you had like for a while there when you had like Randy Bueller, Marshall Sutcliffe was another really good combo, or
Hmm.
you have like LSV, Marshall Sutcliffe, another really good combo for commentary. But LSV is of course back to being a full time pro versus full time coverage member. But so very exciting to see, and I really hope that with the return to the traditional pro tour, we only get to see that coverage continue to improve. Corey
Yeah.
Baumeister was also quite good on coverage over the weekend.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So I really hope that he continues to grow in that role because he is a really good color commentator. But he's also
Hmm.
like a lot of people don't realize this. He's also got the chops as a pro Magic player.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is very very good. So I really hope that he continues to grow. But I honestly, part of me knows that he wants to play.
Yeah.
Versus, which I get that. I would struggle to commentate on the pro tour as well. I'd really just want to be playing. But yeah, just very good coverage. Very excited and a lot of fun stories. Because another feel good story out of this one was Mike Sigrist. Did you see him? Did you actually see what he
uh,
looks like?
I did not actually.
That man, he has lost so much weight, and I'm so happy for him.
Oh, actually, no, I did.
Because like a lot of
I
people
was
didn't
watching.
realize that, but I ran into him. I think he was at Vegas. I remember somebody bringing it up where he was just like he's like uh, he's lost well over 100 pounds.
Yeah, no,
Like
I watched his feature match. Yeah.
yeah, he's looking really fit and really lean. I'm really happy because I can only imagine how difficult that was because it
Oh,
is
yeah.
losing weight is not easy for a lot of people. So I'm really happy to see that he's doing well, and I'm hoping that that he's in good health But yeah, seeing him make a top 8, I think his last one was Magic 2015, where
Okay.
he lost in the finals. That was the Insel
Mm.
Artifact Pro Tour, which is
Yeah.
a really fun Pro Tour in general. A very aggressive Pro Tour. Those rounds went super fast. But yeah, it's been a top performance in a while, and he's been big deal. He's been a lot of good finishes over the last few years. I believe he's played at Worlds once or twice. So exciting to see him with another top finish. And again, another person that I've followed since his top 8 Magic 2015, and I hope that he continues to perform well into the future. But yeah, just a lot of really interesting, because this is our last set championship, of course.
Yep.
Our next major pro event would be the regionals, which is down there
Yes.
by you in the south. It's in Atlanta at
Oh.
DreamHack.
Oh yeah. I won't be able to make that, but
You won't be able to
that's
come by and say hi, because I'll be there.
okay. When is it?
It's in November. I'll shoot you the dates, but
Actually, yeah, no, shoot me the dates because actually, if it's in November, depending on the dates, maybe.
it is invite only, the tournament itself.
Well, that's fine. I mean, they unless they're pulling a you can't spectate thing.
Not that I'm aware of, but the bigger question right now is whether or not you have
Because
to buy
DreamHack,
a DreamHack pass in order to
yeah,
actually
yeah.
play in the tournament.
Well,
Because
yeah,
they
no,
haven't said yet.
that's a question. Because DreamHack is an event. Like they're gonna have like
It's a
pods
massive
inside it.
convention.
Yeah, exactly. So like I could just be there for the convention too.
Yeah,
So
well, that's the thing that I really like about this is that like we are getting Grand Prix back, so this is gonna be the closest thing you get to a Grand Prix
mhm.
that isn't Command Fest. It's gonna have not only the regionals, it's gonna have multiple 10Ks,
Okay.
multiple 5Ks, and a bunch of side events that you can play. So like even if you aren't qualified, you can travel there and do it. My big thing is that it's more here in the US. It's so weird that we're only having one regional championship. Because like
Yeah.
Canada has two, and Canada has like a third of the Magic player population, like
Yeah.
than the U.S. does. And the reason that Canada has two is because of how hard it is to travel from one side of Canada to the other.
Yeah.
Where here in the U.S. it's like, oh, you're from Seattle, we'll see you in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Hope you like a plane ride. Like, it feels weird to me because it feels like they could easily run like one in Atlanta, one in New York, which is actually in Syracuse or or Newark or
Yeah.
whatever random ass city in New Jersey they want to play it in. Because nothing's ever actually in New York. Kind of
No.
like how my Minneapolis Energy was actually in St. Paul. Those are two very different places, we'll say.
Yes. Yes,
Uh,
they are. I used to live up there. I'm very aware.
but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if after this one, because I imagine this one. Gosh, I can imagine this one's going to be a logistical nightmare.
hmm
Because you could easily have 2,000 people playing in that tournament.
Oh, easy. Easy.
Easy. And that's concerning as a
Yeah.
player, because having played in Grand Prix that were that big, they are a nightmare.
Yeah.
And like they take forever. 16
hmm
rounds is not enough for
Yep.
2,000 people, but that's what these events will get capped at.
hmm
Meaning when you're in, because like for maybe our viewers at home who have never seen Grand Prix that big because they haven't happened in a while, there was a GP Grand Prix in Richmond, Virginia that was 5,000 players. Uh, you could go undefeated and not make the top 8 in that event. Like that was insane to think about. Like like there was a possibility of that. Luckily, don't think it actually worked out that way because of some unintentional draws occurred, which does happen a good bit.
hmm
But yeah, there was like when you did the math on 5,000 people over 16 rounds, it's just like yeah, that there's gonna be a percentage of people who just don't make it in, and like you could go X and one and not make the top 8. You're almost guaranteed not to make the top 8 at X and one. You'd have to be at worst X and one to make the top 8, which is terrifying as a player. Because that means it doesn't matter how good you are, it really just came down to your tiebreakers. So hopefully they maybe break it into multiple events at the same venue, or future regionals are just held with multiple at occurring at the same time. But we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. Because you know who we won't see there? None of the people we just talked about, because they're all qualified for the Pro Tour
Yep.
by making the top 8. But gosh, no, I'm really looking forward to Pro Magic moving forward. Both
Yeah.
as a competitor and as a spectator. I eat that shit up, as they say. Well, we have lots of time left because our
Mhm.
topic wasn't too dense this time.
Sure.
Honestly, why don't we take this time? We'll talk about the Budget Battle series,
Yeah.
which
Oh yeah,
has
absolutely.
been by far our most popular Magic content we've made together,
Hmm.
which is super exciting, by the way.
Oh,
I
and I love it too because we won't get into a diatribe about Arena again, but um if 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 you're trying to engage Magic on a casual level, um this budget content is like something that I think is not only like fun but also kind of important. In fact, we've interacted with a couple people on Twitter who were considering making similar content, and we're just like, dude, do it.
just make it, feature us.
Yeah.
Plug my channel, please. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a very important set of content because it's one thing to say that you can do it, right? You can build
Yeah.
decks for cheap. It's another thing to show that those cheap decks you play can function and can
Yes.
create interesting gameplay. Because that is the difficult part of it. Is like, well, yeah, I could build a deck full of commons and uncommons. Anybody could do that, but it's a
Hmm.
matter of whether or not when I inject my budget, rares and stuff, which I think one of the things that actually is a strength of Arena that we've shown off is the fact that every mythic costs the same.
Yes.
Every rare costs the same. Like budget magic in tabletop is a very different place because
Hmm.
like if I said I had a $50 budget for a standard deck, or even a pioneer deck, we'll say, basically impossible.
No,
Like
you're talking a monocolored deck that's probably not playing some of the best cards in that color.
exactly. Because, like, think about it. Like, though we didn't actually get to bring it to camera because of the ban. Like, Winota is a perfect example.
Yes.
Like, you couldn't build it. We in the budget battle series, we could build a budget Winota deck.
Oh,
Tabletop
easy.
Pioneer, like 2 Winotas, and you've already hit your quota. Like,
Yep.
you can't even go past that at that point. So just the fact that I think that is the strength of Arena is the fact that all the cards cost the same amount of money, realistically.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously it's hard when we actually break down like how much per rare and mythic rare you could actually spend, which I think the wild card bundle has done a. Though it's like it was definitely not the right solution, it's still a
No.
better solution for at least people who want to get into things like Explorer and Historic,
It is
where you have to
the
buy non-standard packs and jump whatever
the
cards.
store is claiming that the wild card bundle ends in 3 days.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll
I didn't think that was a limited time product.
no, I did remember during the announcement that they said it was not a permanent solution. I didn't think it would end that soon.
Yeah, because that means it would have been around for a month, not even.
Yeah,
Because like
not
New Capenna
no.
came out the start of this month, and that
Yeah,
that
so
dropped with the New Capenna update.
yeah, so
I
I can't help but
imagine
wonder what they're gonna do.
they might if the only reason they'd pull it off the store is because it wasn't selling. Which, to be fair, a lot of people like were really offended by it
Yeah, no,
because it was
the
very much like not the solution people like wanted. Like it did technically make things cheaper from
mhm,
like the Explorer historic standpoint,
yeah.
especially when it comes to buying like getting jumpstart cards. But like even then, like still not the best. It's not a good solution for standard by any stretch.
No, no. In standard, you're better off just buying packs.
Yeah, you just buy the packs. You're gonna open more relevant rares in those packs and get wild cards. So it's like, yeah, yeah. I'm really looking forward to our next season of the budget battle though, because we talked a little bit about this. I think we
We
can explain.
did.
We'll explain the rules for our viewers at home.
Sure, sure.
So season 4 of the budget battle um, is going to be fun. It's going to be Explorer again. We're going to do another season of Explorer because I think there's a lot left uncovered.
Mm-hmm.
But Drabby Noobs, you and I, we've been falling into traps that we've set for ourselves. We've been
We
building
have.
very very similar decks. So I'm gonna force us outside of our comfort zone a little bit. So this Thursday on this episode of the Budget Battle, whoever loses this week is gonna get some special treatment. So week one of episode 1 of season 4, we're going to pick this Thursday based on who wins and loses what colors we get to play.
Okay.
So for week
Yeah.
1, how that's going to work is there's 6 colors, so all 5 colors in colorless.
Mm-hmm.
The loser is going to get first pick. So if I lose, we'll say I can pick whatever monocolor I want or colorless, and
Okay.
then you're going to get to pick. And then we're going to go back and forth until everything has been picked. Meaning
All right.
we're going to
Yep.
each bring 3 decks, and one of those decks is going to have to be colorless, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Which is I'm looking at it right now,
and whoever wins is probably going to be stuck playing colorless.
probably.
But I think that'll be fun. So week 1 will be colorless. Will be colorless and monocolored. And then whoever wins week 1, again, it's gonna be the same thing. The loser gets first pick. Week 2 will be 2 color pairs. We'll eliminate 4 of them at random. We'll just get an we'll pull up a dice thing and we'll get rid of 4 of them. And then same thing. Loser gets first pick, and then we go back and forth. And we're gonna probably end up in color combinations that are maybe a little outside our comfort zone. And then week 3, 3 color combinations. Which so episode 1, 2, and 3 are going to ascend in the amount of colors in each deck. And again, we'll eliminate 4 at random, and then loser gets first pick. And then our season finale will be differently structured. So normally we just pick whatever our favorite decks were from that month, maybe tune them up a little bit and fix things we realized didn't work, and run it back out. That season finale, we're going to be required to only pick 1 deck from each week.
Okay.
And I want to run this by you here because I didn't bring it up earlier.
All right. All right.
Do we remove the budget for the season finale?
Ooh.
Or do we change the budget for the season finale?
Ooh.
We can keep it the same, and I think keeping it the same is just as fine, but that would really show off where we could be like, well, we forced ourselves into a corner with with the decks that were being restricted in colors. Now, what do we do when we have unfettered access to as many rares and mythics as possible?
So I wonder though, would this take away from our reverse budget, our rich man
Well, why don't we?
event?
Yeah, gosh, that's true. Which I would really like to do that soon.
I'm gonna ask, what by chance are you doing on the 28th of June?
28th of June. I actually don't think I plan on doing anything on the 28th of June as of now.
Well, that's great because I plan on taking 3 days off around the 28th because the 28th is my birthday.
Oh, that's correct. That is your birthday.
So,
well, that's normally a stream night for me. Would you like to have a rich man stream?
I would love to have a rich man stream.
We'll dress up. I'll wear a turtleneck and a blazer. And we'll play rich man magic. So it's going to be the reverse of the budget.
Yes.
Meaning we can only play 12 commons and 4 uncommons, which is a bigger restriction than some people probably realize.
It is a huge restriction.
So we'll play rich man magic. We'll only do 1 deck because I don't want to force anybody to have to buy too many wild cards, even because I'm the whale here. I already own every card.
Yeah, for sure.
I have unfettered access to literally everything. So I look forward to our rich man magic stream. we'll probably have to jam that. We'll maybe play some other decks too. Because we don't
Oh
really
yeah,
explore
well,
things like standard on our channel, so maybe
yeah,
we jam some standard games while we're at it for your birthday.
yeah, absolutely. Most of that 3 days, my plan is to do like a coding project that I've been
Oh
meaning to
sure.
get to. But I would absolutely love to jam some Magic as well.
Oh, I'm all for it. So I'll plan on setting the 28th of June aside to be sure that we can stream together to play Rich Man Magic. And we'll be, of
Fantastic.
course, looking forward to playing out because our season 4 finale would be that Thursday.
It should be that Thursday, yes.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it'd be that Thursday. Oh nope, there's 4 Thursdays
Ooh,
in June. So the season finale will actually be on the 23rd. And we'll be
okay.
starting season 5 on the 30th from the looks of it. So, which will more to come on season 5 as we get closer to it. So, actually, we'll leave the normal budget in place and
Okay.
just revamp a deck from each week. But that does mean, chat, for those who are paying attention, we'll be bringing you 3 decks apiece each week instead of our normal 2.
Yes.
Which, as Drabby Noops knows, I do not playtest these decks. I literally just throw them together, and I only play them against him now, because I want the full, unhindered, untuned experience of playing these decks, and then when I find one I really like, I set it aside for the finale.
Yeah, iterate upon it.
Exactly. That's when I start to tweak it and start to really get my fingers in it. But I'm really looking forward to our new theme of having to play more specific colors, and I think it could be a lot of fun this next season. But of course, the
Oh, for
season
sure.
finale for season 3 or season 4, season 3. That's what we're in right now. I keep
Yeah,
mixing
we're at
them up.
season 3. Yep.
It will be this Thursday. Uh, have you picked the decks you're going to retune for this Thursday?
I have two, and I'm struggling on deciding the third.
Mm. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident. I've been playing the meme deck.
Mhm.
The slip out the Croxa,
Yep.
which I'm almost tempted to play in actual Pioneer now. I just I can play
It
Croxa and
looks.
slip it out the back as a 7/7, which is so funny because I sent you those screenshots today of
Hmm.
where I did the thing on turn 3, and then in response to my opponent's wrath on after my turn 4 was to slip it out the back again. Sick Doomscar, brother.
Yeah. No,
Attack you for 8, trigger discard.
Slip out the back is a powerful card, and if whoever gets blue in the next season, I would be surprised if we weren't jamming like all four of them.
Oh yes, at least in the 75, right?
Yeah, at
Because
least in the
because I
75.
imagine whoever ends up on mono blue is playing the card Curious Obsession.
True.
It's just the truth. Like it's probably the
Yeah.
best thing to do in
No.
mono blue.
No.
So
Absolutely.
I think that would be quite the fun time in general because we do see that in the actual mono blue decks.
Yes.
The mono blue spirits decks in both formats have been starting to those have been creeping in because against like in Pioneer where Supreme Verdict is a card,
Yeah.
your dive downs and your spell pierces of the world can't interact with Supreme Verdict, but slip out the back can protect your creature through a verdict, and then you even get extra power out of it. So it's actively good against the Supreme Verdict as well as just helping you pick up the pace. So it's a very strong card, and I suspect we'll see it continuously see more play, especially in those mono blue spirits decks, as well as the other mono blue decks, because there are non-spirit versions of that deck that people play.
Yeah.
Like in Explorer, I'm actually convinced that the non-spirit versions are just better, but Pioneer, it's a different matter when you just have a much better
Hmm.
cast of spirits as of now. Well, Draven Oops, I believe we've gone through all of our topics.
Yes.
So I think we can wrap this one up just a little early, so because I know it's about 8:20 by you there. You're on
Yeah.
Sunday. You have tomorrow off, I'm guessing. Or are you
I do
working?
not. I
You're
work in
working on the
retail,
holiday. This guy.
but I get time and a half, and then I get 2 days off. So.
Well, you know what? I'll take that. I'm sure that's not the worst it could be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yes. Well, I appreciate your time as always, my good friend.
Of course.
I hopefully will not crush you nearly as bad as I have the last 3 weeks this Thursday, because I would really like to be on first pick. But at the same time, I don't want to lose because I'm undefeated in season
Yeah,
finales
that's
so
true.
far in the whopping 2 other seasons we've had. But so I'd like to keep the title. I might. We've been thinking about getting a title belt. I'll throw it on my wall behind me. I'll put it up with the narwhal. But
I'll draw it on my whiteboard.
yeah, if you win the season finale this week, you have to draw it on your whiteboard now. You gotta have the budget battle championship belt on your whiteboard. All right, well we'll wrap it up there. Of course, we appreciate y'all for watching. If you want to stay up to date with our content here, you can go ahead and hit that follow button if you're on Twitch. Of course, if you're on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to click that bell to stay up to date. And of course, and if you want to support our content even further, you can donate to the channel as well as use the subscribe button there on Twitch. And if you want to keep up to date with us when we're not streaming or on YouTube, you can actually find us on Twitter. I'm at Saltiest Gaijin. My friend here, you're at Drabby Noobs. Is that right?
That is correct.
And that's at Drabby Noobs everywhere he wants you to find him. So of
Yes.
course, keep an eye out for us. I post a lot about my offline Magic endeavors because I do play a lot in like the Nerd Rage Gaming series, as well as other various competitive Magic events that I can find. So of course, we appreciate you all for watching. Drabinums, any closing thoughts for our fans at home?
I would just say, enjoy because there's been such turmoil over the past couple years. I mean, Magic, aside from a lot of the bad stuff, has just been keeping getting better and better, and I think it's really on an upturn. So if you're excited about 60 card constructed formats with an asterisk, because obviously you could play any number of cards you want, but it's if you're excited about those types of formats, just enjoy this time because we don't necessarily know it's going to get better. I mean, the trend seems to be pointing that way. But and if it doesn't, like this is like a golden time.
I agree. Yeah, it's a good time for standard. Enjoy standard while you can. Pioneer's a lot of fun. Modern's a lot of fun. Let's get out there and play Magic.
Yeah.
Again, thank you all for watching. We will see you again soon.